All right, so we are doing learning car edition. And this is mainly because I have about 40 minutes, 40-ish minutes, to get as much learning done as I can, and then we're going to get back to work. But let's freaking get into it. So we left off kind of at like a little bit of a cliffhanger. We're going to be doing sleep tracking, shift work, and supplements today. So without further ado, let's freaking get into it. All right, so this one's going to be about helpful sleep aids. Oh, no, that was just the that was just the thumbnail. We're starting with sleep tracking.
Fitbits, Oura Rings, your Apple Watch, and they can provide some data. However, I still find the subjective data is much more applicable. And just journaling down when you feel like you had good sleep or you had bad sleep. I think that's for bodybuilding purposes. You don't need to overcomplicate this process. If you wake up and you feel rested upon waking, you're likely having pretty good quality sleep. Shift workers. So we're going to give some special attention to all our nurses, police, firefighters, anyone else working night shifts or an altered type of schedule. So, and I will address this further once we get into contest prep and prepping shift workers and give some extra insights around that. A few things here will be kind of repeating into that contest prep lecture, but get a little bit more specific in our prep module around how we might be implementing cardio and managing fatigue is a big one for shift workers. As with altered sleep schedules, you're not going to have optimized sleep. We can do the best that we can. However, without optimized sleep, we're going to have a recovery ceiling that's a lot lower. So for a lot of these individuals, it's going to be slower rates of progress. We'll need longer prep time durations to manage fatigue. And also, even in the off season, we might have a slower rate needed to minimize body fat gain. Now, things that to aid with sleep, though, for the shift worker, and I know there's a variety of different schedules for shift workers. It could be 2 on, 2 off. You might just only be on night shift for X amount of duration. But just some general takeaways here of some strategies to improve sleep quality is, for one, let's start the day of the night shift. So you're waking up in that day, you'll be starting your night shift. Maybe this is go in at 6 p.m. and you're getting off at maybe it's 6 a.m. the next day. So the day of your night shift, ideally, we try to sleep in as long as possible. This might be staying up just a little bit later the night before as well to facilitate that. Just make sure, like all the sleep hygiene aspects that we went through, your room is set up to be completely blacked out and also soundproof as possible, and maybe potentially get used to sleeping with something for white noise creator. Now, during day into night shift, it's not much an issue, but when you're between shift and you're having to sleep during the day, that's when that's going to be really problematic. Other things would be to avoid caffeine early on, so you cannot limit your time of going to bed, and then potentially even a nap in the afternoon may be beneficial in those instances. Now, once you're going on to night shift, stay active can help with just keeping some wakefulness present. It kind of is job dependent. Some people are like, my job's so busy at night shift, like maybe you're some type of ER nurse and like, yeah, it's going to be really active. I would say though, like caffeine would be okay to aid if you are sleeping early in the shift, but I would still abide by that 7 to 8 hours from your next sleep segment to avoid caffeine. So if you normally go to sleep, hey, I get off night shift, I'm usually going to bed by 8 a.m. Around 1, 2 a.m. is probably where we want to be cutting off the caffeine around that time. Now, a 10-20 minute nap would be allowable if you need to have some extra sleep time present. Again, it's job dependent, right? Not everyone has naps that they can be implementing, but this is times where we could try to improve that. If you, for some reason, weren't able to get a lot of sleep, when you're going from your day into this night shift. Limit light exposure on your way home. So when you get off night shift, it might be wise to use like some blue light blockers. Try to also, when you get home, you'll stay off the phone, don't turn on the TV. Try to limit that extra light So as you're already going to have a altered circadian rhythm and not be in your normal day-night patterns, which we really are trying to get someone back into to aid that sleep process. And I would also taper your meals down later in the evening. As we know, during your normal night, the body's not used to eating lots of food and having digestion occur. So some people can get a lot of GI distress if they are eating a lot of large meals throughout the nighttime. Now, between night shifts, so this is during your day, again, avoid lights in your room, try to make sure you're blacked out.
Sorry, he put a point here that says limit heavy meals later in shift, but then he said 2 out of 2 digestion slowing. So I'm not really sure what that means, but limit heavier meals later in shift. And I just want to hear what he says about the 2 out of 2 digestion slowing.
Also taper your meals down later in the evening. As we know, during your normal night, the body's not used to eating lots of food and having digestion occur. So some people get a lot of GI distress if they are eating a lot large meals throughout the nighttime. Now, between night shifts, so this is during your day.
He didn't touch on it. Okay. Thought I was going crazy. Sorry, I'm making sure. Yeah, we should be good. This is not on 4x slow speed like a video was in the past, so we are chillin'. Alright, between night shift. Let's see what he's got to say. Mr. John. Alright.
Again, avoid lights in your room, try making sure you're blacked out. Fragmented sleep is still better than no sleep, so don't just say screw it and get up and go about your day. Still try to do the best you can just to relax, go through that mindfulness strategies that we've utilized. Some people you could even get up and have like some dimly lit light and maybe read a little bit, and then once you feel tired again, go back and lay down and get to bed if you're really struggling. Go to sleep as early as possible, and again, limit the blue light blocking with some type of glasses. Now, to reset after night shift is over, so you have your last shift, you can take a 2-hour nap after that shift and just to freshen up, but then get outdoors and get some sunlight so you can start resetting this biological clock, and then get back to your normal bedtime. So this time is going to be a longer time with low sleep. However, we do want to reset you back into your normal sleep pattern. The issue and thing to really kind of debate here is how long is your shifts going to be in frequency of days. So if you are someone where you're having a string of night shifts and you just have a couple days off, then you're back to night shift, it might be worth just staying on night shift schedule and not trying to reset. The resetting is where it's kind of like very problematic. So now, working at night and sleeping during the day, it's never going to be ideal, but I think it's kind of the lesser evil to just stay on that night shift schedule if you're having long days, long segments of days back to back where you're just staying on night shift. Now, if it's kind of like a 3 on, 3 off type of schedule, that's a tougher one. Like it might be something where you do just need to alter back and forth, or maybe it's I've seen some people do like 4 days on, then they have like a week off. All types of different scheduling. So it's really dependent on what you're trying to do is to create the least fatiguing route to do this schedule as possible. Now, if we're adjusting nutrition, so continue your protein bolus feedings throughout your shift. Every 3 to 5 hours would be ideal. All our previous nutrition guidelines that you're going to cover, I shouldn't say previous, but the ones.
Continue protein bolus. Not sure what that means, but it's probably bowl of protein. No, it's BOLUS. It's probably like protein-filled feedings every 3 to 5 hours. Previous nutrition guidelines are the same. Yeah.
Or sleep would still uphold. The ones that we get into the nutrition module would also uphold. What you could consider doing is that the time duration of that first night shift, you're going to be up for a lot longer than what you normally be. Ideally, I would try to get most of your food in within your normal biological clock window. However, you could let some of those meals go early into the night shift, but then cut them off to where you're fasting the later part of the day, then going to bed. You might have just more time being awake, right? So what you could do if you have someone that's been averaging 6 meals per day is that day going in a night shift, you hit 7 meals, and then the next day is going to be a really short window of waking, so that way you might hit 5 meals. Then you can reset back into your normal 6 meals across your day into night shift. But for these windows where there's not a lot of meals happening, or time duration for those meals, you could keep the window a lot shorter. That window gets really short when you're resetting into day shift, right? So as long as your total calories for the week average out to be the same, you could shift around some meals just based on how long someone would be up. And I think that also could be a great strategy to manage hunger. If someone's just up and they're alert and they're struggling with appetite issues, why don't we move some food to that time of day or time of night? Adjusting training. So limit training in a high fatigue state. This is of course the obvious one. So if you're coming off night shift and you want to go train in the morning but you feel just sapped from the day, it's probably better to make that day the rest day. So ideally you want to be training when you have your most freshest aspect to do. You might be programming like a lighter, less intense session during that time. Maybe that's like an arm day. Don't go train legs. But aim to train either after waking up from sleep, so this would be your post-night shift, or before the next nap, avoiding heavy sessions immediately after the night shift. So ideally you could have your hardest session the day you go into your night shift, potentially, as your sleep hasn't been altered yet. And then, ideally, depending on the schedule, if it's like 2 night shifts, then they're off. I probably would just make those off days. Now, if it's a long duration where we have to train, so I would at least keep that day coming off night shift and switching back a rest day, because you're not going to get a lot of sleep. It could be altered. And then the day that goes into night shift, we absolutely could train on that day. Ideally, training before night shift, I think, would be ideal. It could also help someone stay awake versus training at the end of the night shift and having this long time working and being pretty fatigued from it. Now, some helpful sleep aids, more over-the-counter herbal type supplement versus training at the end of the night, absolutely could train on that day. And switching back a rest day, because
Aim to train either after waking from sleep from a post-night shift or before the next nap and immediately after the night shift. Okay, so aim to train either after post-night shift or before next nap. So it seems like it's... Oh. That is a big... After waking up. Okay. Yeah. After waking... So aim to train either after waking up or before the next nap. So basically, either right after you wake up or right before you have your next nap. So it's like right around when you're going to have your rest. But the type of rest also matters. So I guess it's right before your next nap, because you're going to have time to recover right after training. And then after you sleep, that's another good time, post night shift. So yeah, you basically just want to center it around your sleep, but it's also, don't train right before sleep, and then so train right after sleep or right before your next nap. And then the last one is avoid heavy sessions immediately after a night shift.
You're not going to get a lot of sleep. It could be altered. And then the day that goes into night shift, we absolutely could train on that day. Ideally, training before night shift, I think, would be ideal. It could also help someone stay a bit awake versus training at the end of the night shift and having this long time working and being pretty fatigued from it. Now, some helpful sleep aids or over-the-counter herbal type supplements, or there's a few that are out there tried. Some have varying degrees of evidence for how efficacious they are, but a few are a valerian root. So valerian root, and again, we don't have a ton of data on some of these, so like the mechanisms of action some are not just fully understood. So some are just more potential theoreticals of how they work. Like with valerian root, may increase GABA levels in the brain, promoting relaxation and reducing the time it takes to fall asleep. What we saw, like with our sleep drugs, like your barbiturates or with your benzodiazepines or even the Z-type class drugs, like these work on different GABA receptors in the brain. So, however, valerian is just trying to increase your total levels of GABA, and so that can help with relaxation and bedtime onset. Effective dose here, 300 to 600 milligrams, about 30 minutes before you go to sleep. Another aid, which I find this one has a bit more application, especially in the enhanced bodybuilder user, because we see with users lower serotonin levels, and you'll see this in our brain health lecture, is that 5-HTP is a good recommendation as it increases serotonin, which can then be converted into melatonin. So it's kind of a few steps back from increasing your own melatonin. However, serotonin in and of itself has some calming relaxation effects as well. 100 to 300 milligrams would be a good option around that. Other ones that people, again, this one's almost more anecdotal, that people notice as the evidence is a little scarce for chamomile tea. Chamomile tea contains an ingredient called epigenin. It's an antioxidant that binds to GABA receptors, and this promotes that relaxation to occur.
Yeah, like I said in 2 videos ago, this is going to be very informationally dense. So I'm going to take this a little slower. So I got to 5-HTP, which is 5-hydroxytryptophan. Hydroxytryptophan. Okay, so how it works is 5-HTP is a precursor, precursor to serotonin. Converted Okay, so 5-HTP is a precursor to serotonin, which is converted to melatonin. Supports mood regulation and sleep. And then the effective dose is 100 to 300 milligrams. I'm guessing like 30 minutes before bed. He just says before bed. All right. Now we got chamomile. All right, so chamomile Okay, so chamomile contains apigenin. See how it says it. Apigenin, an antioxidant that binds to GABA receptors. There's GABA again. GABA is an amino acid. Wait, let me use my phone for this. Yeah. Main chemical messenger in your brain that slows down nerve activity. So it's an inhibitory neurotransmitter, but it is an amino acid. Probably a non-essential amino acid, because your body already produces it. All right, cool. So chamomile contains apigenin, an antioxidant that binds to GABA receptors in the brain. To promote relaxation and sleep. Consuming chamomile tea. Okay. So 2 to 400 milligrams of chamomile extract. But you could probably just do just one of those chamomile tea bags and you'd be set to go.
It's a good recommendation as it increases serotonin, which can then be converted into melatonin. So it's kind of a few steps back from increasing your own melatonin. However, serotonin in and of itself has some calming relaxation effects as well. 100 to 300 milligrams would be a good option around that. Other ones that people, again, this one's almost more anecdotal that people notice as the evidence is a little scarce for chamomile tea. Chamomile tea contains an ingredient called apigenin. It's an antioxidant that binds to GABA receptors, and this promotes that relaxation to occur. So you could have like chamomile tea prior to bed, see if that makes some type of noticeable difference. With a lot of these, some are having mixed actions. Some of them have very similar actions. So we want to see like what is the root mechanism here, and don't be doubling down on something that does the same thing. One that I think is very well evidence-based, especially from a recovery standpoint, is ashwaganda. It works through reducing stress, anxiety, and lowering cortisol levels. It has probably some of the better evidence, even over phosphatidylserine, for lowering cortisol. However, you could build some tolerance to it, and it is very well evidence-based, especially from a recovery standpoint, is ashwaganda. It works through reducing stress, anxiety, and lowering cortisol levels. It has probably some of the better evidence, even over phosphatidylserine, for lowering cortisol. However, you could build some tolerance to it, and it could decrease effectiveness over time.
Stress and anxiety. by lowering cortisol, improving sleep. He said you can build tolerance and then let's see what else he
So
says.
I would use it during segments when you have the most stress applied to the body. So maybe this is the last 10 weeks of a contest prep or the last 10 weeks of a push phase, then removing it and bringing it back when you're noticing you are pushing the limits a little bit more. But 300 to 600 milligrams of a standardized extract.
I have to look into the how fast on average somebody builds a tolerance, because this ashwagandha would be a very good tool for implementing for contest prep to get better sleep. That is for sure. So depending on how fast you build a tolerance, we might want to start it he was saying 10 weeks out of a show, but you could probably push it to the 8-week mark just to make sure. But this is all speculation, so I want to make sure that it is very evidence-based when I would tell someone, okay, we're going to take ashwagandha at this time, and then obviously check in, because everybody's going to be a little bit different. So check in with that person weekly just to make sure that they're not building a tolerance too quickly. All right, so 300 to 600 milligrams, standardized extract before bed. All right, on to the next.
Before bed would be a relative effective dose. You can really take this all the way up to 1,000 milligrams, depending on what that standardization is. Sometimes you'll see a 5% standardization or 10%. So depending on how much there is, you might be increasing dosages based around that. But in general, I would say 600 to 1,000 milligrams is very common dosing with ashwagandha. Now melatonin, so we brought up
All right, this is a good stopping point. Sorry to cut it a little short. We might get back to this if I have a little more time later on tonight, but for now, just to be safe, I'll probably, we'll have to see, because I want to learn about these next ones because they're very common, especially melatonin and magnesium. They're also covering L-theanine, which if I remember correctly, is a nootropic that will help with lowering anxiety and stress. So we'll have to see if we can do a little bit more today, because we only got, that was only, around 30-ish minutes. I do want to get a little bit more in today, but we'll have to see if we have time. But for now, I gotta pee. But secondly, I need to get back to work as well. So I will see y'all maybe a little later on today, but for sure tomorrow for whatever else we got going on. So thanks for sticking around. May or may not see you in a little bit.